Okie dokie. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Can you all see that? Hopefully. So to go ahead and get started for, okay. Can I get confirmation that you all can see that my screen said it had a privacy issue? Can I get a thumbs up or a chat response? All right, I'm assuming you can all see it, and if perfect, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, so to go ahead and get started with our with applying to the grant program, you can go to our website, www.la-dn.org. I'll go ahead and start on our home screen. And from there, you go to the About Us section and click on Healthcare Access Grants. You can also go specifically to this link here. Here you will see a button that says Apply Here. You'll have more general information about the program here, but we will go ahead and jump to our application page. This Healthcare Access Grant Program was created to help ease the financial burdens of dysautonomia patients living in California. Our grants help cover healthcare costs related to dysautonomia, so costs not covered by insurance. We know that dysautonomia is a really expensive health condition to live with, and it often causes issues with working. So we are really happy that we were able to provide this program and are excited that we were able to grow it a little bit this year. This year, we anticipate we will be awarding a total of 12 grants of $1,000 to 12 patients. And our applications are open now through Monday, October 13th. So that will close at 11:59 on the 13th. So you have through the whole day. Let's talk a little bit about eligibility first. So eligibility criteria includes having a dysautonomia diagnosis by a licensed healthcare professional. If you do not have a diagnosis yet, but it's suspected, that is also eligible. You must reside in California. Our grants are open to all of California, but we will be awarding 50% of those grants to residents of LA County, as that's where our focus is. You also must demonstrate a financial need. So the eligibility for this year means that you must have a household income at or below 425% of the federal poverty level. So there's a link here to a calculator, which can help you figure out exactly what that number is. So this is a number that's dependent on the number of people in your household. So if it's one, I said 425, right? Okay, if it's one, then you'll put in 425 here and click calculate, and you'll see that the annual income for that number is $66,513. So if you are around that or below, then you are eligible. If it's, 68,000, you're still eligible. It's not a hard cutoff. It's just to, set the eligibility criteria. However, if you have multiple people in your household, you'll go ahead and change the family size number here. For example, if you are an adult disabled dependent and your parents still include you on their tax form, and perhaps it's a family size of 3, you'll put in 3 there, put 425 in again, and recalculate, and you'll find the eligibility number there. Again, if you're married, maybe it's 2, and you'll recalculate there. Other eligibility criteria include having some type of documentation to show your dysautonomia care-related expenses. We'll get into that a bit more as we get to that point in the application, but that's just to show that you have expenses that this grant will help cover. Participation in our community is not required, but we might take that into consideration as we're looking at the applications holistically. If you were a previous applicant to this program or even a previous grant winner, you are still encouraged to reapply. We do ask about your previous application history and if you've won grants previously. And we may give priority to people who have not received grant funding yet. Again, we will be evaluating these holistically, and that will be up for the grant committee to determine. So we do take confidentiality very seriously. This grant is stored on JOT forms, HIPAA protected servers. And the only people who will have access to the full application that you submit, including your name and demographic information, is myself and Emily Sunez, our outreach director. The rest of the grant committee will only receive a redacted version of your grant application, so that there will be, we're trying to limit the bias that will be involved in looking at these applications. All right, so how will we be evaluating your applications? As I mentioned, there will be a grant selection committee. We are still in the process of putting that information or putting that committee together, and we will let you know once we have that full list of people. But previously we have, had representation from dysautonomia patient community. Emily and I are also on that committee, and also from the medical community. So we try to make it a group that will evaluate with, good things in mind. But we will specifically be evaluating applications based on this rubric. So the rubric evaluates based on different essays that you submit. As I mentioned, demographic information will be redacted, so that is not part of the analysis. We will be looking at the dysautonomia impact, the impact of dysautonomia in your life, which will be largely based on the first essay that you submit. An exceptional application will clearly articulate how dysautonomia has overwhelmingly affected your life with specific examples of its significant impact. We'll also be looking at your need for support, and this will come from the second essay, as well as the financial information that you provide and the total cost of the dysautonomia expenses that you require. So an exceptional score here would be the applicant demonstrates an exceptionally compelling need for support. We also look at your dysautonomia care plan. That's primarily from essay 3, and the applicant, an exceptional score would be applicant clearly and thoroughly identifies how the grant award will directly support their dysautonomia care with a specific plan. Again, we are looking for specifics. And I will go over examples from each of these essays and what information we are looking for. Lastly, we'll look at the spending plan that you provide. So the spending table and documentation, and we hope that you will provide a clear and persuasive explanation for how the grant will be spent, including detailed documentation. You'll also see at the top here, we have, just for reference, the annual income you provide, the household number, and the annual dysautonomia expenses. So each person from the grant selection committee will likely be assigned around 10 applications to review. This is for the first round, and they will look at these with, again, the information redacted, but they will fill out here your annual income, the household number, and your annual dysautonomia expenses. We found in previous years that these are the information that it's helpful for people to reference when they're looking at your application. Okay, so back to the application itself. Okay, so we are, as I think I mentioned, we are committed to inclusivity and diversity, and we will not discriminate on the basis of any demographic information, including race, color, religion, sex, gender identity, expression. This goes on. We are very committed to trying to eliminate bias here, and yeah. Okay, so what eligible healthcare expenses might you use this grant for? This is not a comprehensive list, but these are some of the common things that people apply for. It can be acupuncture, co-pays, health insurance premiums, infusion expenses, etc. I want to talk a little bit about what expenses are ineligible. So we know that with dysautonomia, there's a lot of different expenses that to pay for. However, given that we have limited resources, we are specifically asking that these grants be used towards dysautonomia-related healthcare expenses. So we are not, general food expenses are not eligible. So things like Postmates, Instacart, things that, yes, dysautonomia probably means you have to use those services more. I certainly do myself, but we are not, it's not currently an eligible expense. Other things that are not currently eligible include rent, general automobile expenses, and other expenses that are not directly related to medical treatments. So some exceptions to these include things like supplements, electrolytes, and medically directed nutrition. Those things would be eligible. Similarly, if you have to travel a long distance to access your healthcare, you may submit those medical costs as as an eligible expense for this grant. If you have any other specific questions about whether a certain expense may be eligible, you're welcome to ask here or to email us anytime at ladn@la-dn.org. So this application, as I mentioned, is open and through October 13th. If we somehow get a large influx of applications, we might close if we reach the limit of 100. However, that's probably not likely. We will go through multiple rounds of the application analysis with our grant selection committee, and we will let recipients know by December 6th. So we'll let everyone know by December 6th. We will also be, in addition to this workshop, we'll have sort of a last minute office hours on Friday, October 10th from 12 to 1 p.m. if anyone has any further questions. All right, so we're going to dive into the application now. Basic reminders, make sure to complete the whole thing. With this format, it only lets you go page by page. You are able to save the application and return. However, you can't jump to the third page if you haven't completed the first or the second. All right, so this just asks you first to make sure you've reviewed all of the criteria and the above. So we have, so we are going to click next and move on. All right, so I'm going to go through and fill out this application. And if you have questions at any point, please feel free to ask them in the chat. All right, so I'm filling out my name. I am going to use our business address, but obviously you would, I'm trying to fill out our business address. So please make sure that the address you fill out is an address that you'll have access to in December when we are sending out the checks. Okay. We don't have a business phone number, so I'm gonna just fill out a fake one, and then our email. Please obviously fill out your personal information here. We ask you to upload some type of identification that you live in California. So that could be a license, it could be a pay stub, utility statement, etc. Hopefully you have a Zelle account. This is the type of online payment. If you're not familiar, it's usually associated with an email or phone number. Our preference is to be able to send the grant via Zelle. However, if you do not have that, we can send it to the address that you provide, which is why you want to make sure that it is something you have access to in December. However, if you have a Zelle account, we ask you to fill that out to provide the email or phone number associated with that. So given that I know many people are on assistance programs that limit the amount of income you can receive per month, or perhaps you have people who are helping pay your healthcare expenses, one option is to send the check to someone else on your behalf. If that is what you would prefer, please click so here, and then we will, if you are awarded the grant, we will contact you about how best to get that to you. However, if you want it just sent directly to you, just click that button. All right, filling out your demographic information. I'm going to use LADN's birthday, 2018. Your demographic information. This is largely, we ask this mainly because when we go to different funders, foundations, etc., they often ask us about the demographic information of the people we serve. However, as I mentioned, it will not be used to evaluate your application. All right, moving on to the next page, we are asking you to fill out what type of dysautonomia you have. This is just so that we get a sense of, what our members are dealing with. All right, and then this is probably the part of the application that I suggest you get to work on first. This is the dysautonomia diagnosis certificate form. And it's just a simple form that asks for your name, your date of birth, and we are asking for a healthcare provider. It could be a physician, physician assistant, nurse practitioner, etc., to just certify that yes, you have dysautonomia, to sign it, to provide their name and their office address, etc. If you are not able to get someone to fill this out, or if you, we are also able to take medical records stating that you have a diagnosis of dysautonomia or POTS, etc. So I see we have a question in the chat about being unable to upload a specific type of document. So you'll see here that each time you, each section, I'm just going to upload this and then I'll finish answering. So each section that asks you to upload a specific document will list what type of documents are accepted. So you'll want to check the file name of whatever document you're trying to upload. If it's, for example, a photo from an iPhone, sometimes that gets, that's like .heic or whatever it is. And so you'll probably want to export that as a JPEG or a PNG or a PDF. We've tried to make all the options that we can acceptable. And feel free to email us if you're having trouble there. Okay, so that is probably the one part of the application that requires information from someone else, a doctor, etc. So probably the thing that you should get started on. All right, moving on to your financial information. As I mentioned, we are asking you to provide the number of people in your household. So like I said, if you are, if your parents file their taxes with you as a dependent, you'll want to include that number here. So in that case, if it were just me and my parents, it would be 3. If it's just you, it would be 1. If it's you and a spouse, 2, etc. And then we are asking for the previous year's annual household income. You can find this on line 11 of your tax form 1040. I'm going to show you an example here. So this is the tax return form. You'll want to go to, this is the first page of it. You want to go down to question 11, and that's the number we are looking for. So you will put that here. So we're going to put 40,000 as an example. If your previous year's income for 2024 was above the eligibility cutoff, but this year's income will be less, then you have a chance to say that here and to explain that. So say last year's income was 80,000, but this year it will be 25,000. You can put that here, and then we ask you to provide an explanation. So I'm just going to, we have an example here. Okay, so for example, if that's the case, if your income is very different from last year, we ask you to provide just a brief explanation. So in this example, say in April of 2025, I had to stop working due to the disabling symptoms of my dysautonomia, and as a result, my income from 2025 will be 26,000 instead of 80,000 like it was in 2024. I've uploaded the notice to employee as to change in relationship form from my employer as evidence of this change in income. Other things that might be included as evidence of that change might be a pay stub, letter from the employee, etc. If you have questions about that, feel free to email us and we will let you know what works. Okay, so here we want you to, oh, and again, if there is no change in income, it is not required for you to submit that. That's just if there is a change in your income from 2024 to 2025 that you would like to explain. All right, but feel free to leave that blank if it's not there. So we want you to submit the first page of your 1040 or the 1040 that you are filed under. Again, if you do have an income change, please upload some type of documentation to show that here. We next ask if you received a healthcare access grant from LADN previously. So we gave them out in 2023 and 2024. So if you received them in either or both years, please let us know here. I also want to mention that if you received a grant from our fire relief grants this year in 2025, we're not asking about that. So if you received that but haven't received any other ones, you do not need to, you can just say, no, I have not received a healthcare access grant. Okay, so moving on to our essay questions. So, sorry, I'm just going to find our example. All right, so our essay question 1 is, how has living with dysautonomia impacted your life? Please use specific examples such as changes in health, ability level, life goals, career, social life, finances, etc. We want to know what your life has been like and what type of impact dysautonomia has had. So to break this down, here's what we suggest. Introduce us to you and your situation with dysautonomia. For example, and this is just a created example. You might say, I got dysautonomia 3 years ago after having COVID, and it turned my life upside down. I went from being athletic, career-driven person with an active social life to someone without the energy to wash her hair, let alone work. It has totally derailed my life and my life goals. Give us an example of how your life was like before and how dysautonomia has changed it. And then we suggest you get into some specifics about the health impact. So talk about perhaps your symptoms. My symptoms of severe brain fog, extreme fatigue, and GI issues make it hard for me to do anything. I am constantly exhausted and I don't feel like myself. I love to write, but my brain fog prevents me. I love to play tennis, but if I try, I faint on the court. I'm constantly trying different elimination diets, etc., etc. So give us some details about the health impact and tell us perhaps about how it has impacted your work. My illness has prevented me from working. I was unable to continue working as an editor because my brain fog made it impossible for me to focus on the content I was supposed to be editing, etc. I was forced to stop working in April. How has it impacted you financially? Unable to work, I've had to turn to support of my parents for help they cannot afford to continue to give. I'm not well enough to support myself fully. My medical costs are higher than ever, and I need extra costs such as grocery delivers. It would also be helpful to know how it's impacted other parts of your life, for example, your social life and the life goals that you have. Dysautonomia has gotten in the way of my social life too. I've had to cancel on friends so many times that it's gotten in the way of friendships. I want to find a romantic partner, but I don't have the energy to date. I don't know how my chronic illness will impact the relationship. Basically, we want you to tell us your story with dysautonomia. We want you to use specifics. We want you to provide a contrast about what your life was like beforehand, or what your life would be like if you didn't have dysautonomia, and how dysautonomia has changed that. I know this is often a hard story to tell, and we appreciate all attempts to provide us with the information about what your life is like. If it is more accessible for you to answer these essay questions through a video or an audio file, that is totally fine. Just put in the chat box, or the text box, that please see uploaded file, and then upload a file here. And then we will evaluate the essay through that. Okay, so moving on, we are going to our essay question 2. Why are you applying for a LADN grant? Please describe any resources and help that you currently utilize, including social services and family and community support, the overall costs of and your need for financial support in your dysautonomia care, and how this grant would fit into your care plan. All right, let me just pull up the sample essay that we have for this one. Okay. So in the sample essay we have, I am applying for this grant because I cannot afford the high costs of dysautonomia medical needs while being too ill to work. Then tell us what you would spend the $1,000 on. Specifically, I would use a $1,000 grant to pay for compression boots and the co-pays on acupuncture and my prescription for chromalin sodium. So again, we're going back to please provide specifics. So tell us what you would spend the $1,000 on, and then feel free to go into the bigger picture about what dysautonomia care costs you face in your life. So tell us, here we have other dysautonomia related medical expenses that I must pay, include copays to see my cardiologist, neurologist, gastroenterologist, etc. Copays on the 3 other prescription medications I take, Midodin, low-dose naltrexone, Synthroid, over-the-counter medications, compression socks, electrolytes, etc. Again, specifics are helpful just to paint the bigger picture about what it's really like for you and why this grant would be helpful. We'd love to get some information on your overall financial situation. For example, here we have written, I had some minimal savings from when I worked, but I have drained my savings while I've been too ill to work. And things like high medical expenses. Sorry, lost my track there. But I also face things like high medical expenses and living costs, such as rent and groceries. These are things which aren't eligible for the grant application, but it's still helpful to tell us about them so that we know that those are things that you face, and contribute to the bigger picture as to why you need the support. Do tell us about what other support you receive or need. So I rely on support from my parents to afford groceries, but they don't have the financial situation to continue supporting me. If it weren't for my mom helping me with things like laundry and even in extreme flares, helping me to shower safely, I would need in-home care. So that shows us that your medical situation is at the point where, yeah, you require support, and maybe you're able to get it because of your mom is able to help, but it just tells us that you have these needs, and that it's that you deserve the support of this grant. Also helpful to know if you have used any type of government assistance, and just some of the more information as we're getting to, just helpful to get the bigger picture of your needs and why you deserve this grant application or this grant. As I said before, with each of the essay questions, you're welcome to upload these in audio or video format if that is easier for you. Okay, so moving on to the third question. Please describe the impact $1,000 would have on your dysautonomia healthcare. You will be asked to fill out a spending table below. There will also be space to provide documentation of expenses in the following section. Okay, let me pull up our sample here. Okay, so to begin with, tell us how you would use the $1,000. This grant would allow me to purchase Fit King compression boots and pay for 2 months of copays for acupuncture and chromalin sodium. What impact will each healthcare item have on your health? I struggle with extremely low blood flow, cerebral blood flow, and often have episodes where I cannot speak and am near fainting. During these episodes, I have to lie down with my feet up, drink electrolytes, and use ice packs to try and restore adequate blood flow to my brain, but this isn't enough. My doctor thinks these compression boots will help. So some explanation for the health impact that the expense that this grant will pay for will have on your life, so that we know, here's why it's important that I buy this, and here's the big impact that this grant could have. So for here, we're showing, why the compression boots are needed, and how these compression boots would help restore my circulation and pump the blood back up to my heart and brain. My doctor also hopes that using these regularly would help me maintain better overall health and prevent these extreme dysautonomia episodes. We also have here a sample explanation for why acupuncture would help. I found that acupuncture really helps with my energy levels and low blood pressure, so explaining the symptoms that this treatment is addressing. But I cannot afford regular treatments because my insurance only covers some of the treatments. My acupuncturist recommends I come in at least weekly, and this grant would allow me to have weekly treatments for 2 months. So specifics about what this grant would be paying for. And then we have a similar explanation for the chromalin sodium. treatment of, just wanted to acknowledge that dysautonomia has a lot of comorbid conditions, and that can be part of this grant. For example, here we have a sample of the grant paying for chromalin sodium treatment for mast cell activation syndrome, which is a common comorbidity of dysautonomia, and that's fine to apply the grant for that as well. Then we suggest ending with some type of big picture description of how this grant will impact your health. My hope is that with the compression boots, acupuncture, and chromalin sodium, I will be able to address my largest dysautonomia symptoms: low blood pressure, extreme fatigue, and brain fog. This grant would enable me to start making progress with my dysautonomia and improve my health significantly. Okay, so next we ask you to just click on what dysautonomia-related healthcare expenses this grant would be applied to. So for this sample, we've said acupuncture, compression gear, co-pays for the acupuncture, and prescription costs. If you are asking for a different type of expense, that doesn't mean it's better or worse. It's just we didn't put it on the list, but feel free to add it. It won't, it's not like if it's on this list, it's better. So please just feel free to add another option and type what that is there. All right, next is the healthcare expense sheet. So this breaks down how you would spend the $1,000. I'm going to fill it out based on the sample that I put into my face. So it would be, also apologies if you're hearing my dog. She's decided to be active and has joined me in the office. All right, so for the spending expense sheet, we are going to do compression boots. So in this first column, we describe what the expense is. Then we put the doctor who's prescribing it or who you're seeing, or the company. For this example, we're going to say that the company is Fit King that makes the compression boots, and that they cost $359.99. In this next column, it asks for the total cost of this expense. In this example, the total cost is the same as the cost per, so it would be $359.99. And since this is the first one we've listed, it would again be $359.99 for the cumulative cost of all expenses listed. Next, we're going to list acupuncture. And we're asking, where are you going for acupuncture? And I'm going to put acupuncture therapeutics, which happens to be the place that I go. And what is the cost per session? So say that it costs $50 per acupuncture session. Maybe that's a cost that's helped with by your insurance, and that's your copay. You pay $50 per session. And since this grant is going to cover 2 months of weekly expenses, or weekly treatments, that would be a total of $400. So that's 8 sessions at $50 each session would cost a total of $400, which is what you put in this column here. Next, we're going to add that $400 to the $359 from the first expense, bringing our total to $759.99. And now we're going to add in the cost of the chromalin sodium, the prescription. And so we're going to say this is prescribed by this doctor. We're going to say doctor, and we're getting it at CVS. And let's say that each month's prescription costs $150, and we're paying for 2 months. So 2 times 150 would be $300. Bringing our total cumulative costs, we're going to add up all the costs there, would be $1,059.99. So it doesn't have to exactly equal 1,000, but we want it to be somewhere about 1,000 so that we see realistically what this money is going to go towards. So if we do suggest that you try to get it to be about 1,000 to show us that you do have enough expenses that this grant would go towards covering all dysautonomia expenses. We ask you not to include too much above 1,000 because we just want to be able to evaluate everyone sort of equally. And if you're listing a huge number of expenses, then it might, unrealistically look like you need more than another applicant. So try to make it about 1,000. We do ask you here, though, how much you would estimate your dysautonomia healthcare expenses cost in the last 12 months. So here is where you would show us that you spent, in addition to the costs you listed above, that you also had to pay for electrolytes, you also had to buy, you had a bunch of other prescriptions, you had copays to see all your other doctors, and sort of an estimate about what you think that total cost you in the last 12 months. So say we think it cost, so give it a little thought, obviously, and then estimate, say we thought it cost 15,000. I also want to mention that the expenses that the grant will cover, it can be past expenses or it can be projected expenses. So we ask you to upload some type of documentation of the different prices. So for example, here we have, oh, it's not going to show me. Let's see if I can pull it up. I think there's a way to make it visible. Guess not. So for what I'm trying to show you is a screenshot of a receipt, or actually it wasn't a receipt, a screenshot of the Amazon listing for the Fit King compression boots, to show that the current cost of it is $359.99. So the different documentation of expenses that might work. It could be screenshot of a cost that you would buy somewhere. It might be you intend to buy the compression boots on Amazon, and here is a screenshot of the current price just to let us know that, that's irrelevant. That's the accurate expense. It could also be a note from a doctor's office. Say you are interested in trying acupuncture and your acupuncturist has written a letter saying, here is what you could get 2 months of services for this amount. It could also be a receipt of treatments that you have already experienced. And that can be the case whether you continue to get further ones or you had expenses in the last 12 months. Just something to show us that you have these expenses, or a projected total of what those expenses will be for you. And it can also be, receipts from CVS, from a pharmacy, etc. Okay. Lastly, we have the optional essay. So this is just a space, it's not at all required. It doesn't necessarily look better or worse if you have this or don't. It's just if you feel like the full picture of your story hasn't been told yet, this is the space for you to do so there. Also, if there's any ambiguity about your eligibility for applying to this grant, feel free to explain that here. For example, if you are an adult and your parents still file their taxes with you as a dependent, that's a good place for you to explain that. If you didn't have some of the documentation that we ask for, or you had sort of a different version of it, this is a good place for you to explain. It's just an area for you to give more details to make sure that your application is as accurate as possible. We also ask you to select any of the LADN events that you have attended. This just gives us a fuller picture of your participation. We may or may not take that into consideration, and it helps us to know, just to get more information about what programs are being utilized. Lastly, we just have some legal information. We ask you to confirm that all the information that you provided is accurate, that you understand that any false information would disqualify you, that we will do our best to to assess this information, and that applying does not guarantee that you will receive a grant. Basically, it's legalese saying all the required things, and that we will protect your confidentiality and take reasonable steps. Yeah. Okay, so you certify, you put your name. I mean, you put your full name, and the date, and then you submit. I have no idea what the date is. Today is the 17th. I have not filled this out before. Okay. And then you save. And you can review your answers, and then and that will give you a chance to look at the full thing, and then you will save. So, does anyone have any questions? Feel free to put them in the chat, and I will make sure we get to them. So we have a question here. Can one do the application in stages? And will it save your progress? Yes, you can do the application in stages. However, in order to go on to the next page, you will have to have uploaded something to all the required sections. For example, here we require that you put in your dysautonomia diagnosis form. If you don't have that yet, you can put in the form with it not fully submitted. You can put in upload something else and move on to the next page and then come back to it later. And yes, you can, like I just did, click save and return to it. Does anyone have any other questions? And if you are, by the way, if you are working on it, I highly recommend that you save your essay questions in Word or Google Docs or something. Save it somewhere else, just in case the program crashes and you're not able to return to it. Any other questions? Do savings or assets impact this? We are not asking about that. We do ask for your annual income. So if you have interest on those, that will impact your annual income. But currently we are not asking about savings or assets. Any other questions? And how to prove if you have no income? That's a great question. So we, in addition to, so we do ask you to submit your 1040. If you do not submit one, that would be something to explain in an optional essay. Other things that you can submit to show your approximate income might include you could submit documentation of some type of welfare assistance program. For example, if you participate in the SNAP program, you can upload documentation of that program. And feel free to email us if you want to ask specific questions about that. Okay, do you want the expenses itemized as detailed? I have so many expenses, including health insurance, since I lost the job. Do you mean the expenses for the healthcare documentation? Yes, okay. Yes, so we would like them itemized for the so we're asking what specifically the $1,000 would go to. So we would like approximately $1,000 worth of healthcare expenses itemized. And then you can give us an estimate of how much you think 12 months of your dysautonomia expenses cost in total. Does that explain? Great. Any other questions? Okay, well, if nobody has any other questions today, I will just, are you asking if the EDS clinic is a eligible healthcare expense? If so, yes, that is eligible. We know that dysautonomia has many comorbidity conditions that require healthcare costs, and those would be eligible. Yes, as long as if you're asking about who is eligible to fill out the dysautonomia certificate form, any type of doctor or healthcare practitioner is eligible to fill that out. And yes, other disorders connected to dysautonomia would be eligible for this grant, as long as dysautonomia is a large part of your medical condition. and you're able to explain the impact dysautonomia has on your life, you can use this grant to fund related medical expenses, including things like EDS, MCAS, and other comorbid health conditions. Let's see. If you're newly diagnosed and don't have a lot of expenses for the past year, that's fine. Is that okay if I know? Yeah, it's totally fine to show us projected costs. They do not have to be costs that you've already incurred. So in that case, it's helpful to for the compression boots in this example, they have not been purchased yet, but you can see you uploaded an example screenshot showing what that expense might be. And it would be helpful in that case for future costs just to provide documentation for each cost, some type of explanation, some type of documentation showing what that cost would be. So things like that might include a screenshot of a listing on a doctor's office or the company that sells whatever healthcare expense it is, or a note from a doctor explaining what the projected cost is likely to be. Okay, if you have to travel a long distance to see a doctor and have large travel expenses, that is definitely an eligible expense. That, you know, some type of documentation just to show that you, even if it's sort of an estimate, it is helpful to have a documentation to show that there's something that corresponds to the expense on your spending sheet. It will help the committee evaluate. So it can be the receipt from a driver, an Uber. It can be a cost receipt from a gas station. And then just make sure that they're in your essay that you explain that the receipt for the driver corresponds to your healthcare. So say that it is, you are forced to drive a long distance to see your doctor for this, and that's why the medical expense is transportation. Okay, other questions? Yes, the office hours for this would be on Friday. Let's see, where did it go? It's in October. It's the Friday before the grant closes. So Friday, October 10th from 12 to 1 p.m. If you have questions between now and then, you're welcome to email us about them. And yeah, our email is here, ladn@la-dn.org. And we are happy to answer questions specific to your case. Does anyone have any other questions about the grant application? Well, thank you all so much for being here. And again, feel free to reach out at any time. We're always available by email, and we're here to help as you fill out this application. So grateful to have you all as part of our community, and really hope that this is a helpful program. All right. Sending spoons to all of you. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.